In an era where the gods walked among mortals and destiny was written with blood on the battlefields, a child was born whose story would be sung for 1,000 generations. His name would be Achilles. But before the world knew the invincible warrior, there was a prophecy that even the gods feared. Everything began on Olympus. The gods spoke in whispers about Thetis, the nereid of incomparable beauty whose brilliance seemed to reflect the very light of the sea. Zeus, lord of the sky, and Poseidon, lord of the oceans, had wished to take her as a wife. However, an oracle revealed something that would change everyone's destiny. The son of Thetis would be more powerful than his father. No god was willing to create someone who could one day surpass him. Therefore, he decided on something unthinkable. Thetis would be forced to marry a mortal. That mortal was Peleus, king of the Myrmidons. The wedding was an event worthy of the gods. In the mountains of Thessaly, immortals and mortals celebrated the marriage together. The wine flowed like rivers, laughter filled the air, and the musicians played melodies that seemed born of the sky. But not everyone had been invited. Among the shadows appeared Eris, goddess of discord. Offended for having been ignored, she threw a golden apple to the center of the banquet with an inscription, "For the most beautiful." 3 goddesses claimed the prize: Hera, Athena, Aphrodite. That small act sowed a rivalry that, with time, would unleash the greatest war in ancient history. But many years were still missing for that. First, the child had to be born. When Achilles came into the world, Thetis held him in silence while the stars shone over the dark sea. She already knew the destiny of her son: a brief life, a glorious death. Thetis refused to accept that. If destiny was cruel, she would defy it. One moonless night, the goddess took the little Achilles and traveled to the river that separated the world of the living from the realm of the dead, the Styx. Its black waters seemed to absorb the light. The very air trembled there. Thetis lifted the child and whispered to the river, "Grant him what no mortal has ever had." Then she submerged him in the dark waters. The river touched his skin, his back, his arms, his chest, his head. But Thetis held him by a point, the heel. When the child came out of the water, something had changed. His skin seemed to shine slightly under the light of the stars. From that moment on, no sword or spear could pierce him. Achilles would become a warrior, impossible to kill, except for a single place, a small point that the river never touched. Thetis knew that protection would not be enough. The child must also become the greatest warrior that had ever existed. For this reason, she took him to the only master worthy of such a task, the wise centaur Chiron. Deep in Mount Pelion, far from cities and kingdoms, Chiron trained the heroes of the world. There grew the future champions of Greece. Achilles arrived as a mere child, but he was not a common child. Chiron watched him run through the forest and understood something immediately. That creature was made for war. The centaur began his education. Achilles learned to handle the spear even before fully mastering the language. He learned to run through rocky mountains without losing his balance. He learned to track animals, to heal wounds with herbs, and to master his body as a perfect weapon. Chiron also fed him with lion and bear meat and marrow. He believed that gave strength to heroes. The years passed. Achilles grew faster and stronger than any other young man. At the age of 6, he could already knock down wild boars. At 10, he ran faster than the deer in the forest. At 15, no adult warrior could defeat him in combat. But Chiron taught him something more important than strength. One night, while they were observing the starry sky, the centaur spoke. The strength of a hero is not measured by the enemies he kills, but by the lives he can protect. Achilles listened in silence. That teaching was deeply engraved in his heart. When he finally returned to his father's kingdom, he was no longer just a warrior. He was a leader. There he met the one who would change his destiny forever: Patroclus. Patroclus had been sent to the kingdom after a tragic accident in his youth. Although he came from noble blood, he lived now under the protection of Peleus. The first encounter between the two was simple. They trained together, they fought together, they laughed together. But soon something deeper was born between them, a friendship that surpassed blood. One night, sitting in front of the fire, Achilles spoke sincerely. "When the day of the war arrives, We will fight together." Patroclus smiled. Always. Neither of them knew then that that oath would seal their destiny forever. While Achilles was growing up and becoming the most promising warrior in Greece, the events that would lead to the Trojan War had already begun to move like pieces in a divine game. In Mount Ida lived a young shepherd. His name was Paris. But Paris was not a simple shepherd. He was the lost prince of Troy. When he was born, the oracles had announced that one day he would cause the destruction of his own city. Out of fear, his parents abandoned him. However, he survived. And one day, the three goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, came before him. Each one offered a gift in exchange for being declared the most beautiful. Hera promised power. Athena promised wisdom and glory in battle. Aphrodite offered something different, the love of the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris chose Aphrodite. That woman was called Helen, Queen of Sparta, wife of King Menelaus. When Paris abducted her and took her to Troy, all of Greece rose up in fury. Kings and warriors began to gather armies. The greatest war of antiquity was about to begin, but the most important warrior was still missing. The only man capable of deciding the fate of the war. Achilles. Thetis knew the prophecy. If Achilles went to Troy, he would die, but his glory would be eternal. If he stayed in Greece, he would live a long life, but the world would forget him. Desperate to save him, Thetis devised a plan. He took Achilles to the island of Skyros. There, King Lycomedes agreed to hide him, but not as a warrior, but as a princess. Thetis transformed his appearance. His hair grew, his clothes changed. Achilles would live among the king's daughters under the name of Pyrrha. Thus began the strangest life of the greatest warrior of Greece, the hero destined to conquer Troy, hidden among dresses and knitting needles. But destiny cannot hide forever. And very soon, a man would discover the truth, a man famous for his cunning. Odysseus. Destiny can be delayed, but it can never be avoided. For a time, Achilles lived hidden on the island of Skyros, under the name of Pyrrha, among the daughters of King Lycomedes. He wore delicate tunics, learned to weave, sang with the princesses, and walked through the palace gardens. But inside her burned something that no disguise could hide, the nature of a warrior. Her movements were too fast, her posture too firm, her eyes too fierce to be those of a princess. Among all the king's daughters, only one discovered the truth, Deidamia. One night, when the torches illuminated the palace corridors, she approached Achilles and whispered, "You are not who you say you are." Achilles remained still. "Your hands are not a maiden's hands," she continued. "They are a warrior's hands." Achilles sighed slowly. For the first time since he arrived on the island, he could stop pretending. Between them, a secret love was born, a love hidden under the veil of lies that Thetis had woven to protect her son. But while Achilles lived in hiding, the world was preparing for war. In Greece, the kings gathered armies. Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, had assumed command of the expedition against Troy. Menelaus, his brother, demanded the return of Helen. Diomedes, Ajax, Nestor, and many other heroes answered the call. But the soothsayer Calchas announced a prophecy. Troy would never fall without Achilles. The problem was simple. No one knew where he was. Only one man believed he could find him: Odysseus, king of Ithaca, astute, patient, and dangerous. Odysseus traveled through many lands until a suspicion began to take shape in his mind. Thetis had tried to hide her son, but where could she do it? Then she remembered an island, Skyros. Odysseus arrived accompanied by Diomedes, but not as warriors. They arrived disguised as merchants. When they were received in the palace of Lycomedes, Odysseus spoke with a calm smile. "Great king, we have brought gifts worthy of your daughters." Lycomedes accepted with pleasure. In the great hall of the palace, Odysseus displayed a collection of objects: jewels, fine fabrics, gold necklaces. The princesses approached excitedly, but among the objects there was something else: a sword, a shield, a spear. Odysseus watched attentively. The princesses admired the necklaces, the bracelets, the fabrics, but one of them could not take her eyes off the weapons. Pyrrha, At that moment, Odysseus made a sign to Diomedes. Suddenly, a war trumpet sounded. Diomedes shouted, "Enemy attack!" The princesses screamed in fear. Some hid, others ran, but one figure reacted differently. Priam pulled a sword from the ground. He took the shield, and he adopted the perfect posture of a trained warrior. Silence filled the hall. Odysseus smiled. "We found you, son of Peleus." Achilles slowly lowered his weapon. It no longer made sense to keep hiding. "Yes," he finally said, "I am Achilles." Lycomedes was paralyzed. The princesses watched with amazement. Then Odysseus approached. "Greece needs you." Achilles looked at the sword in his hands. For years he had tried to ignore that part of himself, but now war was calling him. Achilles turned his gaze towards Diomedes. His eyes were full of tears. "I must go," he said, in a low voice. That same night, they married in secret. From their union, a son would be born, Neoptolemus. But Achilles would never know him. At dawn, Thetis appeared before her son. The sea seemed to stir behind her. The goddess looked at him with sadness. "Listen well, my son." Her voice trembled. "Two destinies open before you." Achilles fell silent. "If you stay in Greece," Thetis continued, "you will live a long life. You will have children, grandchildren. You will die in peace." Achilles did not answer. "But your name will be forgotten." The wind blew softly. "If you go to Troy," said Thetis, "your life will be short." A pause. "But your glory will be eternal." Achilles raised his gaze towards the horizon where the Greek ships were waiting. Then he answered, "I prefer a short life, full of glory." Thetis closed her eyes in pain. She knew that moment would come. "Then take this." From her hands emerged a resplendent armor. It had been forged by Hephaestus, god of fire and forge. The metal seemed alive. It shone as if it contained sunlight. "These weapons will protect you," Thetis said. Mother and son embraced for the last time. Achilles boarded the ship. 50 ships accompanied him. 50 ships full of the most feared warriors of Greece, the Myrmidons. When the sails were unfurled, Achilles placed himself on the bow. The wind tossed his golden hair. The war awaited him. During the journey, Achilles demonstrated his power. The allied cities of Troy began to fall one after another. On the island of Tenedos, Achilles faced King Thetis, son of the god Apollo. The battle was fierce. The swords clashed like lightning. Thetis was strong, fast, but Achilles was something more. A swift movement, a mortal blow. Thetis fell. The island surrendered. Later they attacked the city of Lyrnessus. There reigned king Mines. The confrontation occurred in front of the walls. "Surrender," said Achilles. Mines spat blood and replied, "I prefer to die as a king than to live as a slave." The fight was brief. Achilles' sword pierced his chest. The city fell. Among the prisoners was a woman. Her name was Briseis. Achilles took her as a war booty, but he did not treat her as a slave. Something in her awakened compassion in the warrior. Finally, the Greek army arrived at its destination, Troy. The walls of the city were gigantic. It was said that they had been built by the gods themselves. When the ships touched the beach, Achilles was the first to jump to land. His golden armor shone under the sun. The Trojans watched from the walls. Achilles raised his spear and shouted, "Hector!" His voice echoed throughout the field. "Come out and face me!" But Hector did not answer. The Trojans remained inside the city. The siege began, a war that would last 10 years. During the first years, Achilles became the terror of Troy. No warrior could stop him. His enemies fell like wheat under the storm. The Greeks called him the invincible. But even the greatest heroes have enemies, and Achilles' greatest enemy was not in Troy. He was in his own army, Agamemnon. In the 10th year of the war, an event occurred that would change everything. The god Apollo unleashed a plague on the Greeks. The reason was simple. Agamemnon had taken Chryseis, daughter of a priest of Apollo, as a slave. To stop the plague, Agamemnon was forced to return her, but his pride did not allow him to be left without compensation. That is why he took something that did not belong to him. Briseis, the woman of Achilles. When the heralds arrived at his tent to take her away, Achilles trembled with fury. "This is an insult," Patroclus tried to calm him. Achilles. But the anger had already exploded. Achilles tore off his armor and threw it on the ground. Let Agamemnon fight his own battles. And so the unthinkable happened. The greatest warrior of Greece abandoned the war. Without Achilles, the Greeks began to lose. The Trojans advanced. Hector led the attacks. The Greek ships began to burn. Then Patroclus made a decision that would change history. He approached Achilles and said, "Let me use your armor." Achilles looked at him in silence. "The Trojans will believe it's you," Patroclus continued, "and they will retreat." Achilles hesitated, but finally he accepted. "Just defend the ships," he said. "Do not pursue the enemy." Patroclus nodded, but in the heart of the war, promises are easily broken. And that day, fate began to close in on Achilles. The battlefield roared like a storm. The dust covered the sky. The spears clashed against the shields, and the sound of steel resonated throughout the plain in front of the walls of Troy. But that day, something had changed. Among the Greek warriors advanced a figure that shone under the sun. The golden armor, the helmet with horsehair, the resplendent shield. The Trojans saw him, and terror spread among their ranks. Achilles has returned. The soldiers began to retreat, but it was not Achilles. It was Patroclus. He wore his friend's armor and led the Myrmidons with a fury that no one expected. The spear pierced shields. The swords fell like lightning. The Trojans retreated step by step as the Greek army regained ground. Patroclus fought with a savage valor. For years he had seen the glory of Achilles from the shadows. That day, for the first time, the war looked at him. Chaos birthed Sarpedon, Zeus's son. When he saw Patroclus advancing among the corpses, he raised his spear. "Stop!" His voice resounded on the battlefield. "If you are Achilles, today I will demonstrate that even demigods can die." Patroclus responded without hesitation. "Then come and check it out." Dust and blood bloomed. Spears shattered shields. Troy's mightiest warrior. His sword flashed. His spear grazed. In an instant he saw the opening. He turned his spear, and he plunged it into Sarpedon's chest. The son of Zeus fell to his knees. For a second he looked at the sky, as if he were looking for his father. Then he fell to the ground, dead. From Olympus, Zeus was watching. His son had died. But not even the king of the gods could alter destiny. The battle continued. Patroclus was drunk with victory. The Trojans were fleeing towards the walls. The city gates looked closer and closer. In his mind echoed the words of Achilles. "Do not pursue the enemy." But the sound of war was too strong. Glory called him, and Patroclus advanced, beyond the ships, beyond the field, even the very walls of Troy. Then the air changed. An invisible presence manifested itself. The god Apollo, protector of Troy. The god appeared before Patroclus wrapped in light. "Retreat." His voice was powerful. "This is not your destiny." Patroclus was breathing with difficulty. Sweat ran down his face. "I have sworn to defend the Greeks." Apollo looked at him sadly. "Then you will die." The god disappeared, but his influence remained. Suddenly, Patroclus felt an invisible blow. His helmet fell to the ground. Achilles' armor loosened. His spear fell from his hands. Before he could react, a warrior approached. Hector, Prince of Troy, champion of the city, the greatest hero of the Trojan side. Hector observed the armor. For years he had waited for that moment. Finally, Achilles. Patroclus raised his gaze. "Let's fight." The battle began. Sword against sword, shield against spear. Both fought with impressive skill. Hector was experienced. Patroclus was fierce. For several minutes, neither gained an advantage. Then Hector saw something. The armor was loose. The helmet had disappeared. And at that moment, he understood the truth. With a powerful blow, he disarmed Patroclus. The helmet fell. The face was exposed. Hector frowned. "You are not Achilles." Patroclus was breathing with difficulty. "But you will die anyway." Hector raised his spear. You have fought bravely." Then he launched the final blow. The spear pierced Patroclus's chest. The warrior fell to the ground. Life was leaving his body. His last thoughts were for his friend. "Forgive me, Achilles." And then he died. The news spread like fire. When it reached the ears of Achilles, the world seemed to stop. For a few seconds he did not speak. He did not move. Then, a cry of pain pierced the Greek camp. A cry so terrible that even the gods heard it. Achilles fell to his knees. He covered his face with ashes. Patroclus. Tears ran down his face. He had never known such pain. His friend, his brother, he had died wearing his armor. Thetis emerged from the sea. She had felt the pain of her son. When she arrived at the camp, she found it destroyed. "My son." Achilles looked up. His eyes were burning. "Hector will die." Thetis kept silent. She knew what that meant. "If you kill Hector," she finally said, "your destiny will be sealed." Achilles answered without hesitation, "Then I will die." Thetis sighed. Then she said, "Wait here." The goddess descended to the kingdom of Hephaestus. The blacksmith god worked all night. He hammered the divine metal. He molded a shield that represented the entire world. He forged the most powerful armor ever created. At dawn, Thetis returned. When Achilles put on his armor, the Greek warriors retreated. It shone like the sun. It seemed made of fire. Achilles took his spear. He got into his war chariot. His immortal horses began to advance. One of them, Xanthus, spoke. Hera had granted him a voice for an instant. "It will not be today, but your death is approaching." Achilles answered calmly, "I know," and he rode towards war. That day, Achilles became a storm. No one could stop him. Trojans fell by the dozens. The river Scamander filled with corpses. The river god himself tried to stop him. The waters rose to drown him, but Hephaestus sent fire to save him. Achilles continued advancing. He was only looking for one thing, Hector. From the walls of Troy, Hector saw him approaching. He knew what it meant. In the palace, his wife Andromache held her little son. "Don't go," she begged. Hector caressed his son's face. "I must do it." He kissed his wife. Then he walked towards the city gates. His parents, Priam and Hecuba, were crying, "Don't fight him." But Hector shook his head. "I have lived as a warrior. I will die as a warrior." The gates of Troy opened. Hector walked towards the battlefield. Achilles awaited him. The two heroes looked at each other. Silence covered the field. Greeks and Trojans watched. They knew they were about to witness something that poets would sing about for centuries. Achilles spoke first. "You killed Patroclus." Hector replied. "He died like a warrior." Achilles clenched his spear. "Today you will pay for it." The duel began. The clash was brutal. Hector moved with incredible skill. His sword struck with precision, but Achilles was something different, an unstoppable force, driven by fury, driven by pain. The combat lasted long minutes. Finally, Achilles saw an opening between the neck and the armor, the only vulnerable point. His spear shot out. It pierced Hector's throat. The Prince of Troy fell to his knees. Life was escaping from his body. With his last breath, he said, "Return my body to my family." Achilles looked at him without emotion. "The dogs will eat your flesh." Hector died. Achilles tied his body to the chariot, and he dragged it around the walls of Troy. From the top of the city, Andromache screamed. Priam fell to his knees. The war had crossed a point of no return. The wrath of Achilles had consumed everything. But even the greatest fury cannot escape destiny. And soon, the invincible hero would face his own end. The death of Hector changed the war. The champion of Troy had fallen. But the victory did not bring peace. It brought something worse, the darkness within Achilles' heart. Every day, at dawn, the hero tied Hector's lifeless body to his war chariot and dragged it around the tomb of Patroclus. The Trojans watched from the walls with horror. Andromache wept until she lost her voice. Priam, king of Troy, aged years in a matter of days. But the gods were watching everything, and many of them began to feel disgusted. The honor of the heroes had limits, and Achilles was crossing them all. To prevent Hector's corpse from being destroyed, the gods protected his body. Despite the days dragged by the earth, the flesh did not decompose, the skin did not tear, as if a divine hand preserved it. Finally, Zeus decided to intervene. He ordered the god Hermes to guide a man towards the Greek camp. An old man, a father, King Priam, a silent knight. Priam abandoned Troy. He crossed the battlefield full of corpses. He walked among the tents of the enemy army, and he arrived at the tent of the man who had killed his son, Achilles. Hermes led him unseen. When Priam entered the tent, Achilles was sitting in silence. The old king approached. Then he did something that no one expected. He knelt and he kissed the hands of Achilles, the hands that had killed his son. Achilles was paralyzed. Priam spoke in a broken voice. "Remember your father." Silence filled the tent. "Your father is also an old man," Priam continued, his eyes filled with tears, "and someday he could be in my place, begging for the body of his son." The words pierced Achilles' heart. For the first time since the death of Patroclus, the hero felt something different from anger, pain, memory. Achilles thought of Peleus, his father, far, alone. Then Achilles began to cry. Two enemies, two men, two fathers, crying together in the middle of the war. After a long silence, Achilles spoke. "Get up, King Priam." The old man obeyed slowly. "You will have the body of your son." Achilles ordered that Hector's corpse be washed. Then they placed it on a cart covered with cloths. "There will be a truce of 12 days, said Achilles, "so that Troy can say goodbye to its prince." Priam bowed his head, and that same night he returned to the city with the body of Hector. But the war had not yet ended. With the passage of months, new allies arrived to defend Troy. Among them appeared a feared figure, a warrior queen, tall, powerful, dressed in black armor. It was Penthesilea, queen of the Amazons. Her warriors fought like storms, fast, fierce, relentless. On the battlefield, Penthesilea faced Achilles. Their swords clashed like lightning. The Amazon queen was extraordinary. For a moment, she seemed capable of matching the greatest warrior of Greece, but Achilles was unstoppable. Finally, his sword pierced the queen's chest. Penthesilea fell, and, in the instant that her helmet fell to the ground, Achilles saw his face. Beautiful, strong, brave. For a second, Achilles felt something unexpected. Respect, even sadness. But war does not allow stopping. Another enemy soon appeared. A prince come from distant lands. Tall as a giant, dark as night. It was Memnon, son of the goddess Aurora. The duel between Achilles and Memnon shook the battlefield. The two heroes fought with superhuman strength. Each blow made the earth tremble. But, once again, Achilles was victorious. Memnon fell, and with his death, another great defender of Troy disappeared. Now only one person capable of changing the destiny of the war remained. A man who was watching from the walls. Paris, the prince who had started it all. Paris was not the strongest warrior, nor the bravest, but he was an excellent archer, and he knew something important. While Achilles lived, Troy would never have hope. One day, while the Greeks attacked the city gates, Achilles led the charge. His armor shone like fire. No one could stop him. Paris climbed the walls. He placed an arrow on his bow, but even he knew that Achilles was invulnerable. Except for one point. The only point that the waters of the Styx had not touched. The heel. Then something else happened. Apollo was watching. The god still remembered the death of his son Sarpedon. He decided to intervene. When Paris shot, Apollo guided the arrow. The projectile went through the air, silent, fast, deadly. The arrow hit directly in Achilles' heel. The hero stopped. The pain went through his body. He looked down. The blood began to run. For the first time in his life, Achilles understood. Fate had arrived. His legs gave way. The invincible warrior fell to his knees. The battlefield fell silent. Achilles raised his gaze to the sky. His lips whispered a name, Patroclus. Then his body fell to the ground. The Greeks ran towards him. Ajax the Great arrived first. The enormous warrior lifted the body of Achilles and took him out of the battlefield while the Trojans tried to reach them, but it was already late. The greatest hero of Greece had died. When the news reached the sea, Thetis emerged from the depths. The waves stirred. The sky darkened. The Nereids wept beside her. Thetis embraced the body of her son. For 17 days and 17 nights, the sea and the sky mourned the fallen hero. Finally, the Greeks prepared a huge funeral pyre. The body of Achilles was placed on a mountain of wood and offerings. Warriors from all over Greece gathered to say goodbye to him. Warriors from all over Greece gathered to say goodbye to him. Agamemnon spoke before them all. Achilles was the best of us. The tears ran down the faces of many soldiers. His name will live forever. When the fire consumed the hero's body, his ashes were collected and mixed with those of Patroclus, just as both had wished. The remains were buried in front of the sea, where the waves would eternally sing his name. Although Achilles had died, his spirit continued to inspire the Greeks. Shortly after, Troy would fall, not by force, but by cunning, a plan devised by Odysseus, a gigantic wooden horse. But that is another story. With the passage of centuries, poets and storytellers told the story of the hero with light feet, the invincible warrior, the loyal friend, the man who chose a short life in exchange for eternal glory. Achilles, son of Peleus, son of Thetis, student of Chiron, scourge of Troy. His life was brief, but he burned like the fire of 1,000 suns. And as long as men continue to tell stories, the name of Achilles will never be forgotten.